Good evening, Second Baptist and all our friends. Welcome to Family Check-In and to all of our friends all over the place. We are grateful that you thought it not robbery to let us come in your home once again. We just thank you so much. We've got Dr. Danjal on again, and he's going to share with us. We apologized last week for the technical difficulties, but we've got it all worked out tonight, and we're going to have a great program, a lot of information, and we can get some of your questions asked. And so if you have some questions, go ahead and log them in, and we'll try to get them tonight.
Good evening. I say good evening. Thank you for allowing us again, as he has already said, for coming into your home. We give God glory and honor and praises for you, and we thank God for his faithfulness towards us. We want to acknowledge the fact that God is God all by himself, and we want to give him praises and glory for all that he has done and all that he does and all that he is going to do. We want to remind everyone that we want you to check out our Facebook Children's Church Facebook page. You have to go to the church's website page, not the church's Facebook page. The Children's Church website page is on Second Baptist, secondac@org. And so we're asking our parents to please make sure that you take the time to invest in your child's spiritual growth. And we give you glory and honor for that. We also want to ask you to continue to pray for Brother Rick Brandon, Deacon Rick Brandon, and the loss of his father. We pray that God will be with him at this time as he was with me during my time and my recovery. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, we do want to remind you our minor classes have begun. We have classes Tuesday nights. We have two classes on Tuesday, one for the men and one for the women. The women's class is Choose Joy because happiness is not enough. The men's class is God's plan for men. And then no, that's on Saturday. Tuesday night, look it up. Chapman's going to post it for you so you'll know what it is. And also, we do
Amen.
want you, before we go into the program, just want to remind you again, Easter Sunday morning, we're going to be at Surf Stadium at 11 o'clock. We only have one service that day. We're going to be at Surf Stadium. And so we invite everybody to come. It's going to be, it's going to be outdoors and plenty of space to space yourselves out. It seats 4,500 people, so we have plenty of room for everybody, and we can socially distance on Easter Sunday, and we're going to have a great celebration. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to get right into it, and we're going to welcome Dr. Danjal to share with us tonight. Thank you, Dr. Danjal, and welcome back to Family Check-In. And again, thank you for being so gracious to us, for coming back on again after that. Now, I know how precious your time is, but I know you got a tremendous commitment to community, and you want to get the word out just like we are concerned, because uh, the African American community, the Black and Brown community are being impacted far more than our white brothers and sisters. Uh, COVID, and I know we have, and maybe you can talk about that and maybe what some of the reasons for that is tonight. But welcome back.
Thank you very much. This last time we talked a little bit about the science behind respiratory viral illnesses and how the vaccines, kind of came about. That they weren't just invented right after the pandemic began. That the building blocks of the vaccines were put in place, for decades, almost 25 years, and the process really accelerated after 2008, when the Human Genome Project was put forward by the Obama administration. This time, I think it's kind of important to talk a little bit about fear, which is, I think, what a lot of the holdup is about getting the vaccine. Now, what's going on with as you mentioned earlier, what's going on is that the African American community is suffering worse from the pandemic than the community at large. But even the community at large, there was a statistic published last week that the overall life expectancy in the United States has decreased by 1 year
Wow.
overall. So people in the United States, on average, are living 1 year shorter this versus last year. Statistical analysis.
Wow.
The statistic for African Americans, though, is significantly worse. That drop in overall life expectancy is 2.7 years.
Wow.
So it's about 3 times worse for the African American community than it is for everybody else. And that includes the Hispanic community, which is also doing poorly. So I think it's very important that the African American community take advantage of the technology that's been made available, the vaccines that's been made available, and use this as a wake-up call to make sure that people take care of themselves overall, not just get vaccination, but also do general health maintenance issues, which is probably the big part of why African Americans and Latinos are doing worse than whites, because they have a little bit more reluctance to go to the doctor. When they go to the doctor, they don't get the same care that the white community gets for a variety of reasons that I really don't want to go into right now, because there are just too many to go into right now. So I think the onus falls upon the patient for the most part, that they have to take the lead in making sure that not only they get their vaccine, but they also take care of diabetes, their high blood pressure. Those are the two big problems that happen in the African American community, which are not taken care of at an early time, that cause kidney trouble and other problems later. So that I think has to be mentioned before we go too far into talking about the vaccine.
Yeah, before you go further, though, you just made some very sobering, that's some very sobering information. So it is it, did the life expectancy go down because of COVID, or is just
That's the reason.
Because of COVID?
Because of COVID. I mean, there's really no other big difference in mortality in 2020 versus 2019.
Okay.
So that's a very substantial drop in total life expectancy for one reason.
That is a tremendous amount of 2.7 years, and then the disparity between our white brothers and sisters and the African American and black and brown, and that is very sobering.
It's very concerning. So, was there something else,
No,
Pastor?
I was going to say, in terms of one of the issues you're talking about, taking advantage of the technology, and I want to go back to that because, and you started last week, and I want to make sure that we get that information. And I don't know how much, where we, last time, where we went into the loop. But can you just go over a little bit about technology again, kind of refresh everybody's mind, especially if we have some new listeners and new viewers tonight?
Okay. So, as I mentioned last time, my undergraduate degree is actually in biochemistry. So, I'd done bench research in undergrad as an honors project in college and in medical school. And the amount of labor involved in analyzing DNA and proteins at that time was very, very labor intensive. If you got a DNA sequence, a gene nailed down within about 6 months, that was pretty good. Okay, now you can nail down a gene within days. And the reason why that days was because in 2008, the Obama administration put forward something called the Human Genome Project. And it was such a big project that the estimate for finishing the project was going to be 70 years, 70. Okay, with the tools that were available to me when I was in medical school and college. Okay, so basically that project forced everybody to make new tools. Okay, so the tools to manipulate DNA, RNA, and proteins really took off. Within a few years, within 6 years actually, the human genome was completed. The tools were made, the human genome was sequenced. We started looking at which genes are doing what in the humans, not just humans, but also yeast and fruit flies and things like that. But those are practice things for doing it in humans. And so when those tools were ready to go, okay, they didn't just stop using those tools. The drug companies, continue to use those tools, sequence proteins, do protein folding and analysis on computers And protein folding has gotten to the point now where you can actually do it on a home computer. You don't require a supercomputer to do this anymore. So those tools, have been put forward over the past 12 years or so. And when the virus came out in March of 2020, within 2 months, the Italians had actually sequenced the viral RNA and published it on the internet. So by end of May, the entire viral genome was known. So then, the horse race had started. Everyone's got the bench tools to start analyzing the virus, generate segments of the virus and analyze them, do protein folding analysis of the area in question that the vaccine has been made to target. So when end of May the sequence was published by the Italians, everybody in the world was, the starting gun had started, and everybody was, kind of working on the same project, and there's a big flurry of activity on the internet. Everybody is sharing information fairly openly, not completely. I mean, there's a lot of proprietary stuff going on with the drug companies. But, within a few months, the vaccines were ready to go and ready to be tested in phase 1, phase 2. And then the third phase, the phase 3 trials took the longest, and that's the point at which they were approved by the FDA.
Now, can I? One of the questions that someone asked me earlier, one of the concerns about, we're taking, um, uh, getting the vaccine is, effects down the road into the body that's an adverse effect on the body. How long does the vaccine actually stays in the body, and how long will the immunity be?
The vaccines actually, that we talked a little bit, that there were 3 platforms. Platform 1 was the mRNA vaccine. Platform 2 was the DNA vaccine, and the platform 3 was the either the killed vaccines or the modified live vaccines. Now, platform 1 and 2 are the only ones that are available in the United States. So, mRNA and DNA vaccines. The DNA vaccine has not been approved yet, so the 2 vaccines that are available are mRNA vaccines. The reason why the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is a single-shot vaccine is that it's kind of released slowly into the body, so the vaccine stays in the body probably about a week or so. So that's how long it stays in the body. The mRNA vaccines are pretty much gone within 36 hours of each dose, so they leave fairly quickly. The mRNA is codes for the protein, the spike protein of the virus, and the DNA does the same thing. But so both vaccines do code for the spike protein of the virus, and the spike protein will circulate for several days in the body, and that'll generate the immune response that you want. And the immune response, we know, lasts a minimum of 5 months.
So
probably, but minimum 5 months.
So there will be no long-term adverse effect on the body because the vaccine is gone within 36 hours?
Well, the vaccine's gone within 36 hours. Now, adverse effects, can be from the body's own response, too.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't guarantee with 100% certainty that there's not going to be any adverse effects. So one of the questions last week was if someone who had Guillain-Barré from the vaccine, influenza vaccine, can something like that happen with the COVID vaccine? And the answer is it could, I guess. But the thing is that getting COVID, we know, is such a detrimental effect to the body, and you're going to generate antibodies against spike protein from getting COVID. And I think the risk is significantly less of having a detrimental effect to the vaccine than it is from getting COVID. And you're going to see the same detrimental effects from COVID as you would from getting the vaccine, if you're going to see any at all. But less of them and a less severe effect.
Mm-hmm. Now, since you talk about this, how does COVID actually affect the body? In what ways?
Well, I don't think we're going to know the complete answer probably for about 10 to 20 years. But
Wow.
What we know is that most of the damage appears to be vasculitis. So inflammation of the blood vessels, the vasculature.
Okay.
And so early on, when I was taking care of patients with COVID, we're having patients with multiple organ failures at the same time. Within 8 hours, they come to the hospital, they get put on the ventilator. 8 hours later, they were dead. And we're not seeing quite so much anymore, probably because the dose of exposure is lower. People wearing masks. When you do get COVID, you start off with a lower viral dose, and it takes longer for the process to begin. The body has more time to fight it off. Inflammation is slower. So we're not seeing quite the kind of thing before, but we're still seeing vasculitis. Okay, so we're seeing blood clots where we're not supposed to. We're seeing capillaries leaking protein where we're not supposed to. They're supposed to be holding the protein in the blood, and the blood proteins are out of the blood vessels and into the lung. And when that protein leaks into the lung, scar tissue cells go into the lung and scar the lung down. And it's similar to a process called adult respiratory distress syndrome. But adult respiratory distress syndrome capillary leak is from a significant physiologic stress. This is capillary leak from direct endothelial damage from the COVID.
Now I got another question that someone asked. Can the vaccine cause any type of lymphedema? And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it right.
There's been no reported cases of that.
Okay, good. All right. Great.
So can he explain how
So the vaccines has been reported to cause some rashes.
Okay. So before you go there, so how does the vaccine actually work in the body?
Okay, so the both vaccines, all three vaccines that we're going to see over the next several months, okay, really code for the spike protein. So if you look at the coronavirus, the ball of the coronavirus, you got these spikes sticking out of the coronavirus. So when you see the picture of the coronavirus, the spikes sticking out of it, those are the spike proteins. Okay, those spike proteins actually latch on to something called the ACE receptor, the angiotensin converting enzyme receptor. Okay, so that receptor is found in the blood vessels, in the kidney, and in the lung. And so when you give the vaccine, a segment of the spike protein, not the whole spike protein, but a segment of the spike protein will be manufactured by the body itself. And that is a foreign protein. That's not something that the body has ever seen before. Mm-hmm. So when the foreign protein gets picked up by the immune system, they're like, hey, this thing's not supposed to be here. Let's figure out how to get rid of it fast. And then you form antibodies against it. And the B cells that form those antibodies will be programmed to make the antibody against the spike protein. And the T cells that are designed to regulate the B cells are also programmed at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there's two different cells in the body that offer the defenses against the infection: B cells and T cells. The B cell immunity, the antibody immunity, dissipates after about 5 months. The T cell immunity should last longer, but we don't know how long.
And so you said the immunity should last about how long? You think you said 5 months?
Minimum 5 months.
Minimum 5 months. And that's after the second shot, after the second vaccine.
After the second shot, it should be minimum 5 months.
Okay, so for a person who, especially our seniors who get the vaccine, when can they kind of, what does that allow them to do now normally in terms of what can they still have to wear their mask, but can they be around their grandkids or should they still be isolated?
The CDC guidelines, what you're looking for, is the CDC guidelines is that 2 weeks after the second dose, okay, you can basically visit with family, and go out masked, okay, for 3 to 4 months.
And so there's going to need to be another booster shot in 6-7 months.
The big shots in the so far, pun not intended. The bigwigs in the ID community haven't said so yet, but my personal belief is we're probably going to need a booster in the fall.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And the booster is probably going to be a little bit different. It's probably going to go after the South African variant.
Okay. So by the time that at the pace that we're going now, getting shots in arms, When do you think things will get back to normal? You think it'll be back to normal maybe Christmas time, that we can have a sense of normalcy?
That's what Dr. Fauci said. And, so far Dr. Fauci has been very reliable. He has not been swayed by politics. And I don't know if you know about Dr. Fauci's history, but there's a book called Harrison's Internal Medicine. I mentioned this last time. Okay, and he is one of 4 authors of that book that pretty much every doctor in the United States has read. Okay, so he is a well-established, well-respected name in the medical community. He's guessing December.
I got a couple of questions, several questions. Is this the first time that this type of vaccine have been given to humans?
Yes, it is. And like I said, the building blocks for this have been put in place for 12 years, but these are Lego blocks that were ready to be assembled and ready to be used. We just never had the opportunity to be forced to use them in such a rapid fashion.
Okay. The other question, if they're on immune suppressing drugs or have other conditions, how the vaccine affects someone who has an immune disease?
The vaccine may not work as well in patients who are immunosuppressed.
Really?
Okay, but
should they still take it?
The recommendation is that they should still take it because they're the ones that are most at risk for getting COVID and dying from it. So it may not work that well in those people, but they may be the ones who benefit the most.
Okay. I think here's another question. With the vaccine not being tested on humans before, why are they touting this as the for the treatment or the vaccine against COVID? I'm trying to reword it in a way that makes sense.
Okay. I got 2 answers for this, and I'm going to give you the short answer first, and I'm going to go a little bit off, okay? They're touting this because there is no herd immunity for this disease. This disease is 5 times worse than influenza. The vaccine is extremely safe. The negative outcome rate for the vaccine so far is 0.00075%, so 3075, and the negative outcome for COVID is 5%.
Wow.
So it's really not a comparable number. So it's being touted because this was like a home run hit out of the park. The vaccine we had hoped was going to be 60 to 70% effective. It's 90+% effective. So this is a fantastic vaccine. We should be we should be thankful to God that this thing is here for us to use, and we should use it. That's number 1.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's the message we're really trying to get out, but it's been a little difficult to get out. And that's one of the reasons that we have you on, and we're grateful that you are on, to help give assurance to people who are most skeptical about the vaccine, trying to educate them, give them the assurance that it is safe, and that we should take full advantage of the vaccine. And I look at it as a miracle. This is a miracle, and to be done in such a short time when this has, and I have friends all over the world, and I mean, and it's marched all over the world, and everybody's being negatively impacted by COVID, which has, that especially for those who are the most vulnerable economically, as well as not being able to get to the hospitals because, so many of the third world countries that I work in, the hospital systems are in such bad shape, and to have a drug that is economical. I mean, we put a lot of money into it, but it's free to anybody in the United States. I think we've really got to get out and get the word out that it is safe, and we need to take full advantage of it. Okay, someone is asking a question. Once you get the 2 shots, I think we talked about that. Do you have to get it again in the future? And I think you said maybe you're thinking maybe the fall we'll have to get another shot after the 2 shots. A booster shot in the fall.
That's personal belief. Okay, so please don't take that as something that is being put forth by the medical community at large.
Yeah.
That's me Okay.
Well,
So
for us, sometimes we have to get prepared. We have to get prepared. We don't want to come back after take two and say, wait a minute. So I think that's a good idea. Another question is, with someone with G6PD deficiency, take the vaccine.
G6PD deficiency. So that's oxidative stress deficiency. I don't see why not. The problem with G6PD is that you're more likely to have hemolysis. So the question is, will you have hemolysis with the vasculitis? You may get some hemolysis with the vaccine, but again, the risk of that is significantly higher with the COVID infection than with the vaccine.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the answer is yes, but you probably want to be a little bit careful about you're watching your urine color and things like that. So if your urine turns dark, you probably need to go to the hospital. But I think the vaccine is still going to be a positive, net positive issue for somebody with G6PD.
Good. Okay, I'm trying to get. Is this the other question?
If I could just stop you for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to talk a little bit, a couple of questions ago. Basically, people have fear. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about fear, and then we can, kind of go forward a little. When this pandemic started, I'll be the first to admit I was afraid. Okay, so back in March 2020, I was out of my element. I had a new disease that was a respiratory disease. I didn't know how I was going to defend myself from it. I didn't know, whether or not I was going to be taking it home to my 80-year-old parents. I didn't know if I was going to infect my wife and child with it. I didn't know if I should check into a hotel and work from a hotel for the next several months. I knew I had to work, but I just didn't know how to deal with it. I was stuck on the internet, and there wasn't much information, and not having information for somebody like me is an anathema. I was having a big problem with that. So I'll be honest, right? When this thing got started, I was afraid. Okay, so I understand fear. I understand fear of COVID. I understand a little bit about the fear of vaccine, because if I extrapolate the fear I had COVID initially to the vaccine, I understand fear. Okay, so I'd like to, tell everybody, in the audience that, it's okay to be afraid. I was afraid.
Doc, I think also, as you talk about fear, we talked about last week, we had over 365 people through a drive we did at the church to get vaccinated last Monday. And one of the overwhelming things that, feedback I received from that was that it was a burden of anxiety lifted when they got the vaccine. And like a tremendous weight lifted off of them. And even that, because the stress level has been so high, because many of us know persons, family members, who succumbed to COVID complications. And and the most vulnerable part, even black and brown people are vulnerable, are negatively impacted. There are those in our community who are more susceptible to the COVID vaccine. And so to each one of them, especially those who had comorbidities, who were able to get the vaccine, just the stress level was lifted, which made such a big difference in their overall health. Living under such anxiety in itself is really bad. And I think that's one of the reasons that, people really should make sure that they try to take advantage of the vaccine.
Yep. So getting back to, I was afraid, when this thing all started. When the vaccines were being tested and, the free trials were being published, again, I was afraid because, the CDC has been taken over by Lord Voldemort. Do I trust it? Do I trust the FDA? So luckily I had the ability that I've read multiple drug trials in the past. And when I read this one, it was no different than any of the ones in the past. There was no, question in my mind that it was run well. People who had privy to the original data, so people like the head of the Brown College of Public Health, they had read the studies. They came out and said, this all looks good. everybody, the vaccine was approved using the normal pathways without, getting ramrodded through the FDA.
Okay.
Okay. So at that point, I felt better about the situation, and I was literally first in line to get the vaccine when it was offered to us. And of course, the vaccine was delivered a day late, so I was put in the end of the line. But I was signed up first day.
I was following the UPS and the FedEx trucks, hoping something fell off the back of it. So that's how desperate I was to get one. Someone asked a question. Someone with a history of low white cells, um, should they take the shot? How will it affect them negatively?
Most of these questions about immune deficiencies, low white cells, and things like that, really are going to be problems. Are you going to get the full benefit of the vaccine? The answer is maybe not. Okay, but should you get the vaccine? Absolutely, because you're the one who's going to suffer the most from getting COVID. So yes, you should get the vaccine.
Okay. What else would you like to say to the viewership? And there's a lot of people watching. And okay, here's a question. Let me answer this question. I don't know if I can. Can you help me with that question? Someone's going to help me with that question, kind of decipher it for me.
If you got the wrong shot? If you got the second shot instead of the first one?
No, I don't. I can't go. If there's something else you want to say, we're going to figure that question out. I can't. I'm going to ask Reverend Batu to re-ask that question.
Basically, he's asking if you got the second shot first instead of the first.
But the same. No, I don't think there's a difference in the shot. It's the same dosage the first and the second time, or is there a difference in the?
The first and second dose are exactly the same in both Pfizer and Moderna. The AstraZeneca vaccine, there's some question as to whether or not the first shot should be a lower dose versus the higher dose. AstraZeneca vaccine is not available in the United States, so that's not a question that needs to be asked in the United States.
Okay. There's a question about: is it because you have to sign a waiver for the vaccine because it's experimental, or you that's something that's a practice always?
For the vaccine, because there's too many lawyers in the United States.
Okay. Okay.
Everyone covering their posterior.
All right, I understand. We're getting so many responses about people how they're feeling getting the shot. One of the things that people are concerned about is the second shot. So we've got a litany of people who've taken the first shot, and they're hearing that the second shot, you might have some symptoms where you didn't have them the first time. Can you talk a little bit about that and what is actually happening in the body when you have the symptoms?
Yeah, what's happening is that the first shot, is like your first exposure to the foreign protein. Okay, so the body makes you get the mRNA. The body starts making the foreign protein. The body sees the foreign protein and starts reacting to the foreign protein. The first antibodies that the B cells make is immunoglobulin M. We talked a little bit last week. And immunoglobulin M is a kind of a weak antibody. It's a very large molecule. It's a weak antibody, not very immunogenic. And the B cells are not ready to make a lot of it either because they're still ramping up as the first shot happened. Okay. So the second shot, the B cells and T cells have seen it before. Okay. And they're already ready to make IgM, and they will start making something called IgG, which is about 20 times stronger than IgM. So immunoglobulin G instead of immunoglobulin M. And that reaction is going to be about 20 times stronger just from that. And those B cells have already grown in number. Okay, so the term is called proliferated. Okay? They've grown in number, and the T cells are ready to go as well. So the army is armed, ready, and in formation, ready to go for your second shot. So you're going to get a larger immune response from the second shot than you are from the first. Okay, so you're going to feel it. Okay, so personally, I had a sore arm for the first shot of the Pfizer vaccine. For the second shot of the Pfizer vaccine, I had a pretty good fever, 102. Tylenol didn't really seem to help much. Motrin seemed to do more. It was kind of an odd feeling of the fever. I didn't really feel hot in my head, which is where I usually get my fevers. I felt hot on my skin. skin, like my skin was burning all over.
Mm.
It was a very odd sensation. And your reaction to a immune response like that should be like mine was, okay, which was, oh, thank God it's working.
Okay, that's good to
Because
hear.
didn't do anything, then I'd be worried that the vaccine's not working. But if it did something, I'm getting side effects from it. That means my body responded great, and I should be well protected.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. The other thing, we know that the vaccines are about what 95% effective. So there's another 5% that that people still can get COVID, uh, but it won't.
It's a 5% reduction in risk. It's a slight difference, but go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. Well, explain the difference.
Um, you have one, you have 5% the risk of developing COVID after exposure as versus somebody who didn't get the vaccine.
Okay.
Okay, so it's if I run around trying to get exposed to COVID, okay, if you do it multiple times, your risk is not 5% anymore. It's
Right.
like 5 plus every time you expose yourself.
Right. Oh,
Okay,
okay. So, but if you do get COVID after you have the vaccination, the effects are minimized.
correct.
Okay.
Right. We I don't think either of those vaccines had any deaths in the study arms, if I recall correctly. So no deaths from COVID from the study arms. People were hospitalized; they got sick, but they didn't die. So the effects were minimized. Yes.
Okay.
Someone was asking about mixing.
Okay.
Pfizer
So
with
if you,
Moderna.
I know they're saying. So the question is, if you get a Pfizer in the beginning, and can you get a Moderna in at the second shot, or you shouldn't?
Theoretically, yes, but you should try to get the same one. Let's try to stick to the studies.
Okay. What about if you have if you don't have a spleen?
Again, immunosuppression. You need the vaccine more than anybody else.
Okay. I've spoken to some people and they're waiting for the Johnson and Johnson, which I say if you got one available, take the one that's available, but they don't want to get the second shot, so they're waiting for the Johnson and Johnson, and so I'm saying that, but I want you to say that that's not a good strategy.
Well, I would take the first available shot. Okay, I wouldn't wait for a single shot. I would take whatever is first available. However, if you are only going to take one because you want to take that one, then I'm certainly not going to argue with somebody who's willing to at least take a vaccine versus somebody who's not willing to take any vaccine.
Well, that's true as well. That's true as well.
So, I guess what I'm doing is I'm learning to pick my battles. But yes, I would rather you took what's first available.
Okay, I got a question, but I only see half the question. So, uh, okay, all right. So I think I'm caught up on my questions so far. So, what else you would like to say about as relates to anything else uh, before we close tonight? What else were your final words for uh, the listeners today?
Well, again, let's kind of go back to fear. I think it's okay to be afraid. Fear is a normal reaction to the unknown. That's a reaction, like I said, that I had last year as well. At least, given my background, I'm not afraid of vaccines, but I'd like to pass that along to other people that you shouldn't be either. Okay, vaccines are really not the unknown. Okay, what's more unknown is actually getting the disease. Okay, so we know what it does immediately. We don't know what it's going to do to people 20 years from now. If anybody has seen the movie Awakenings, nobody knew that influenza, causes permanent brain damage in some people. 10, 20 years down the line that you start seeing. I hope we don't see anything like that with COVID. But you're more likely to end up with something like that if you get the disease than if you get the vaccine. So if you really are afraid of the unknown, the disease is a worse unknown than the vaccine.
Yeah. One thing before you leave is, we're in the middle of the flu season as well, but it doesn't seem like We've had a big problem. We asked people also to take the flu shot, get the flu vaccine,
Yes.
which I really pushed. And but there not have seemed to be many people with the flu. Is that
Okay.
because of what?
It's masking.
This is
So,
masking. Wow. So
so,
you know.
so if in Japan, actually, they have in Taiwan, they have a culture of masking. It's kind of interesting to see, and their approach to masking is actually much more scientific, reasonable, however you want to put it, than our approach has been. They understand that basically you wear a mask to be polite to other people.
Well,
Okay.
I wonder how we can make that culture change. I mean, in terms of, uh,
Well, I think it's one step at a time. So I think if we educate ourselves that that's actually what it's for. Okay, I wear a mask to protect you. You wear a mask to protect me. Okay, that's how these masks work. Okay, so both of us have to wear a mask in order for us to protect each other.
well,
Okay, if I walk into a room and someone's coughing COVID into it, and I have a regular level 2 mask on, okay, just a standard surgical mask, that's not going to protect me very much. Okay, but if the person who has COVID is coughing into a mask, and I have a mask on, neither one of us are going to transfer.
well,
Okay, so that's how masking works. So it's really, I think it's a matter of politeness to wear a mask.
yeah. And it look like we've been wearing a mask for quite a while now as well.
Unfortunately, so I think so, and hopefully we'll get the Japanese attitude toward masking.
Yeah.
They don't get much influenza either because of that. So if somebody feels poorly, they put a mask on, whether it's influenza, rotavirus, adenovirus, whatever. Okay, they're afraid of giving it to other people. That they'd be mortified that they gave it to somebody else.
Wow. Well, I wish we could adopt that attitude. I mean, that is that's the nicest thing we could do for the other person, is
Yes.
not to pass on a virus, and especially as we go through COVID-19. But I really want to thank you. You have been so informative. You have really availed yourself to us, and we cannot say thank you enough. You are deeply appreciated, and from all the responses, everyone has been. I got another question, but but I'm not going to hold you all night. Let me get one last question, and I don't know if I can even. If you're a splenic, ASPLENIC.
Yeah. This one was already asked and answered, actually.
Oh,
So,
it was. Okay.
yeah. So people who have no spleens have a small amount of immune suppression. So they are at higher risk from the COVID itself. The vaccine may not work as well in those people, but they should still take it.
Good. Well, Doc, thank you so much. I really owe you a great debt I won't be able to repay. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much
It's been my
for the
pleasure.
energy. And to Second and all of you, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And we know you were informed, and education and information is power. It's power to making the right kind of decisions that you need to make for your health and for the benefit of your family and our community. So do the right thing. Get a shot as soon as you can. Get vaccinated. And, be nice. Wear a mask. Don't pass on anything to everybody. I really appreciate it. Let's be like the Japanese and the Taiwanese, and the Asians in that regard. Let's do that. Thank you so much again, Doc. Appreciate it so much. Thank all of you for joining in tonight. And everyone have a blessed night. See you Wednesday.